Yo, we are live. All right, let's go ahead and jump into some articles about being a professional developer. But yeah, I appreciate people's patience. I'm a little bit late today, but this month is going to be busy, just giving you a heads up. But I brought up two articles. I just want to go over them, kind of just see the state of things of how to become a developer. Not how to become a developer, more so of like kind of some of the truth about being a professional developer, because I think there are a lot of misconceptions, but also how to upgrade. A lot of developers kind of just get comfortable. They get stuck in a rhythm, and they assume just because they're holding a dev position, it makes them grow as a developer, but a lot of people don't even think about like what direction they want to grow in as a developer. So I think I have a couple articles to dive into these topics, but let's go ahead and see. What's up, Tornelius? How you doing? All right, let's go ahead and jump on in. So for this round of reactions, I'll go ahead and look at chat a little bit more often. I'm not creating videos out of this. I'm just going over some stuff. We'll chat about it. All right, let's do it. 10 hard to swallow truths they won't tell you about software engineering or software engineer job by Mensur Durakovic. Last weekend, I had a chance to talk with some students who just got their degree. They're pursuing their first software engineer job. In conversation with them, I learned that they have a pretty wrong perception of this job. This is because the reality for these new kids is so skewed. All right, let's hear it. Last weekend, I had a chance to talk with some students who just got their degree. They're pursuing their first engineering job. In conversation with them, I learned that they have a pretty wrong perception of this job. Why did you just repeat that? What was the point of that? This is because the reality for these new kids is so skewed. Okay. They only see good pay, remote work, team building, and pizza parties. These are all good perks, but no one is talking to them about the real things that we do in this job. As someone who has spent a lot of years in this industry, I gave them a slap of reality in the face. I told them good things, but also some hard to swallow truths. After reading this article, some people will say I'm talking overly negative about it, but my opinion is that these things go together with a job and you have to accept it. Pretty base so far. What's up, Jessa? What's up, Toki? What's up, Jays? Happy Tuesday. How you guys doing? All right, so you could be too negative about the software engineering industry, and there are plenty of toxic people in the software engineering industry. But I think the industry, I don't know. See, I talk to new developers who can go on either side, where they have like a very negative view of the industry, and they're going to take certain actions that reflect their lack of interest of like probably sticking with this for a long time, versus people who are overly optimistic, who kind of expect, you know, like ping pong tables, pizza parties, beer in the office, rice. Can I talk today? Right? So like people sometimes get sold about the perks. Sometimes you get this perception in a coding boot camp world, in a self-taught world. I feel like less CS graduates have this perception. So it's interesting to hear that this is coming from CS grads. Let's dive into it. What's up, Code Chronicles? All right, college will not prepare you for the job. This is the first thing I explained to these guys to precisely describe how college will prepare you for the job. Imagine that you were learning how to swim. Your instructor spends a huge amount of time to describe you all the moves you need to make. He makes you recite all those moves, ask you questions about it, and you have exams about it, but you never touch the water. After 5 years, you get a piece of paper that proves your swimming skills. Then the day comes and you have to swim now. The guys in the swimming place just kick you into the water. You have a hard time breathing, you fight for your life, maybe you'll drown, maybe you will manage to swim. That's what the first 6 months look like for a freshly graduated student in software engineering job. No, that is just garbage. What? That is a bad environment. What the fuck? No. So, there's truth to building, to solving problems, and reinforcing what you've learned. But a lot of CS programs nowadays, like in the old days, it used to be a lot, at least from my perception, it used to be a lot more math focused. It's a little bit more coding focused. You aren't actually solving problems through a computer science degree. So I don't think that's a good analogy that you're just pushing someone into the pool and they either sink or swim. That's not what a typical first software engineering job is. It might feel a little overwhelming, but it's not a sink or swim situation. And if it is, you were one of the rare people that managed to bullshit your way into that job, and now it's truly a sink or swim situation. So I think this is complete bullshit. I think this is a terrible analogy. The college will prepare you for some basics, but what most of the colleges teach is so far away from day-to-day jobs. But I will say that practical application is lacking among a lot of CS grads. I just feel like the analogy went too far. Most of the professors who teach at universities are not good software engineers, and that is, I mean, I can see that being true, but I don't think that reflects the students doing the grunt work and building and solving problems. A lot of the professors reciting the same problems they already know about, that's true, but I don't think that reflects the student's experience necessarily. So I feel like this author is trying to reflect that, you know, you're learning theory, you're maybe learning you're building a foundation, but you haven't really applied it yet. I just think this author's doing a terrible job at explaining that. Or this author like really truly believes CS grads are just fucked. Maybe that's an exaggeration. I don't know, but I feel like the analogy that we started off with was just way off. Only a small percentage of them even worked as software engineers. That's probably true. Also, the university curriculums are heavily outdated. They trot years behind the software development market needs. That is true. You have to put in extra work while you are in college, code more projects besides homework and seminars. That is true. Do some volunteering, learn about business domains to prepare for the job that awaits you. Most of the students don't do that. They wait until they get their diploma to start working on their portfolio. Like, this is all true. I agree with all this. Like, from this down, I agree with all this. A lot of CS grads think they're going to be job ready and be very marketable just because they have a CS degree. And like, you're even hearing about a lot of CS grads struggling to be able to get positions because, like, if you go the self-taught or coding bootcamp route, the alternative education, there are going to be holes in your knowledge, holes in your skill level, what you can do. There are different holes than if you were to go for a CS degree. There are going to be different holes in your knowledge and what you can do, right? Because alternative paths tend to focus more on practical application. CS tends to focus more on theory and foundation knowledge. But a lot of students, this is actually very true, a lot of CS grads have a false expectation, again, if they just come out with a CS degree, they're going to be marketable. And it's usually the students that are kind of building stuff on the side, that are curious about tech, that are solving problems throughout, especially like get an internship, volunteer, build an application for a business in a local area. Doing something extra is incredible. It's good experience. It really helps you grow. It really helps you reinforce at least some of the things that you're learning. But you're hearing a lot of stories like right now of CS grads truly struggling, and this is why, right? It's also because the market is rough, but this is a big reason. This is a very controllable thing. But yeah, let's continue. What's up, Renee? Thanks, Small. Hello. Welcome, everyone. Hope everyone's Tuesday is going well. All right, so you will rarely get greenfield projects. That is very true. In college or boot camps, you get a lot of smaller assignments that you write from scratch, total freedom to express yourself. You can implement all the fancy stuff you learn, like algorithms or design patterns. The time you spend on these assignments is at most a few weeks, but mostly a couple of days of work. Typically, those assignments contain at most 500 lines of code. No, that's really low. I mean, like, you're going to do a lot of small assignments. You're going to do a lot of small projects as you're growing to reinforce what you're learning. That is true, but your portfolio work should be well over 500 lines for a single project. I'd be surprised if it wasn't. Like, if you're talking about, like, a capstone project, if you're talking about projects that you really want to showcase, it doesn't necessarily need to be over 500 lines of code to If you're solving a specific problem, applying for a company that also has a relatable problem like that, that's fine. It's not really about the lines of code, but on average, like your showcase projects, the projects that you built on your own that aren't tutorial based, that are problems you want to solve, and you're showcasing this is what you can do, this is your capstone project, it's probably going to be way over that. In day-to-day job, you are working with projects that contain multiple layers and thousands of lines of code. Yeah, but it's like your assignments. You're not going to be going through, in your day-to-day, you're not necessarily going to be going through anywhere close to even like, sometimes you're spending time with just like less than 100 lines of code. Sometimes you'll jump around to different files, but I feel like this comparison, it just feels off. It feels like comparing apples to oranges because, you know, you're going to be going over smaller assignments, solving smaller problems, and you're going to be a little bit more focused on that in some of your smaller assignments, just like you would be in your day-to-day job where you're not jumping around through thousands of lines of code. I would agree with the multiple layers, and I think that extra context and that knowledge will build, and you'll have that knowledge, so you don't necessarily need to go over those lines of code again unless you need to refresh. But I feel like, man, there's something off about this comparison. Multiple people work at the same time on those projects, but that's true for trying to become a developer. Is this not true for CS programs? Are you not doing group projects? Are you not doing group assignments? You have limited freedom. You have to adapt to the project. Yeah, so you have more freedom with personal projects. You have to adapt to the project. You have more autonomy with your personal projects and your assignments, your workshops, stuff like that. The time you spend on projects is usually half a year to a couple of years. Yep. So there's more depth to the project, but I think the complexity that you dive into can actually be very high for your personal projects. And I think the complexity that you dive into, and because sometimes you're just like really siloed in on a very small portion of the code base, right? Especially to start out, just like you would be for kind of like some smaller projects. Sometimes you spend but the extra context is, it's going to be a little bit more complicated, and it's going to take more time to understand that sometimes for your actual code bases in a professional environment. Sometimes you spend a whole week fixing the nasty bug. The fix is just a couple of lines of code. You talk with your colleagues, you exchange information about the project, you collaborate with them to get approval for your solution. So yes, bug fixes can take a little bit longer sometimes in getting other departments involved, especially people who have ownership over that, right? Like, what should this feature do? What is it connected to? And talking to maybe the developer that worked on whatever you're diving back into to solve. New projects are rare. Most of the time you work on existing projects. You can consider yourself lucky if you get the normal project and not some old legacy project. This is true. And I think as you become a little bit more senior level, you start getting more autonomy, more trust within the organization for you, and you might be able to lead or take lead on a new project, on building a new microservice, on something major, like a major shift. So this is true, and I think a realistic expectation is you're probably not going to be building anything new anytime soon. You might be building a new feature, but in terms of like a new project, typically you're not going to be doing that as a professional developer, especially when you start out. So I was looking at this. What is this? Start, database, security, core logic since 2003. I like this graphic. This is actually really good. This reminds me of, what is it? Only Up? Is that what the game is called? Core logic since 2003. Third-party code. This is really good. This is a good graphic. Not as long of an article as I thought, though. So this is really filling the space. All right, nobody gives a fuck about your clean code, and we're not going to bleep that. Okay, let me see what this person has to say about it. You can forget that your boss will tell you, congratulations, I'm writing this elegant and clean code. I'm giving you a raise. Quite the opposite. Nobody cares about your clean code. Don't get me wrong. People expect you to write good and clean code. still you will rarely get any praise for it, except sometimes from your colleagues who will review your code. Okay, well, why is this relevant? I guess it's like to set the expectation that when you're learning how to code, you just need to solve the problem. You need to get it working. That should be your very first step. Like when you're new as a developer, just get it up, get it working. Try to understand what's going on. So I guess it's just setting the expectation of that this is now an expectation of you writing better code. So I think in the beginning, you're probably going to get some congrats from some good teams that are trying to build up your confidence. I think that's fine. And generally, software engineers will kind of gauge, okay, is this person too humble or is this person too confident? And I think a lot of software engineers like to balance that a bit, because no one built up of when you don't have enough confidence to at least you can become dependent, asking way too many questions, or you just sit there not looking up anything, just trying to solve it, and you kind of get into your own mental loop of like, it just takes longer and longer to solve, and you kind of just continue being stuck and not knowing even when to ask the right question. But you need a little bit of confidence to at least say, hey, you know what, I don't understand this concept, but I can at least figure it out. I think a lot of software engineers, they respect that resourcefulness. Even if you go down the wrong direction, okay, now you could talk about that and you can have them guide you a little bit towards the right direction, and maybe like the way you solve problems, the way you try to find answers, it's broken. It can improve. But to say that nobody like really cares about your clean code, I feel like that's too extreme. That has not been my experience at all. And I'm wondering if this author just went through like a really shitty process as a new developer. So I don't think you'll necessarily get a raise for it, but I think it might, it's going to be in consideration if you're writing a lot of code that other developers like to work with. It's readable, it's maintainable, and like you're accounting for things that you should be accounting for the problem that you're solving, like, and you write your code in a way to accommodate that, it's going to be a consideration in your raise. This may be a shock for some new folks, but it makes perfect sense. As a software engineer, your primary task is to generate value for users. Writing code is just a step that accomplishes that goal. I agree with that. You can think of it as the following cycle. Software engineer writes code, users get new features, more users use your products, company profits from the products. So code is just a tool to get profit. I agree with that. I've seen so many graveyards of projects with horrible legacy code bases. Still, these projects are successful as they have fancy landing pages and solve users' problems, so users are happy to pay for using them. The user doesn't know how the code base looks. The user just sees what features that product is offering, so don't get overly attached to your clean and elegant code. Focus on shipping the feature on time and bug-free. I really like what I think the author is going for. And it's essentially focused on you being a user-centered developer and understanding that coding is just a tool and you're there to solve problems. I feel like that's the push here. And I agree with that if that is the push. But you're just going to get a variety of expectations. Even like you're going to get a little bit more of a common culture on the team in the startup world of getting it done, getting it out there. Honestly, sometimes even if it's a little buggy and just getting that feedback, right? It depends on your user base. Whereas when you have a company that plans very far ahead and has the budget and runway to be able to do so, and, you know, like they don't need to pivot immediately because they have a 3-month runway, like, and they could plan ahead and really take time to write quality code that is going to be scalable and maintainable in the future. You know, you might find that at more established companies, larger companies that have the budget for that. So you can get a huge variety. And I feel like even in my experience as a startup developer, I would argue that I got a lot of appreciation for how readable my code was, how clean my code was. Now, we could argue what the clean code actually means. And I think that's even going to differ depending on the company and the team that you're on. But is this like the right message to send to new developers? I think it is. If I don't know. I'm 50-50 on this. I think the message is to solve the problem first, but I feel like this doesn't really paint an accurate picture of like the average dev job. It's really dependent. Like this feels very startup heavy. Like this author went through a lot of startup jobs. You will sometimes work with incompetent people. People have prejudices that only smart, competent people work in the IT industry, especially a software development branch, but this is far from the truth. As in every job, you will sometimes have incompetent people in your environment. Working with them is very frustrating. They waste so much time and create a toxic environment. On top of that, they are extremely unproductive. All this reflects on deadlines and produces delays. This costs companies money and resources. All true. Unfortunately, I also had experience working with those kinds of people. I just say they tested my nerves so well that I spent a good amount of time thinking of ways to get around their incompetence. Here's some advice. Try to be efficient, productive as much as you can. Focus on yourself and not them. I agree with that. Try other options, solutions that don't involve that person in the process. I mean, at a certain point, like, leadership just needs to get involved with this. Document everything you do. If things go wrong, you have proof of their incompetence. This is actually true, documenting, and even, like, documenting your wins, right? Hey, I just got this feature out, and, like, just kind of, that's one thing that I learned to do early on, and I think that was a tip from my first boss, was just to, like, shout out your wins. Like, if you got a big feature, just, like, and you're excited about it, hey, just finished this feature. Like, get excited about it. You'll notice, like, there are other people that are that are bought into that feature. It's going to affect them within the team, even if they're not devs or whatever. Like, they'll get excited about it. And I think just like, I think those like self shout outs, like, don't be obnoxious and do like every fucking bug that you fix or every single thing that you do. But like, if you push something big out, it's like, feel free to shout it out and get excited about it. I think that generally is very welcome on dev teams and just in the company in general, especially from the people where that fix or that feature will affect their side of the business. But yes, document what you do. I think you could do this a little bit too often as a new developer. But when you have more independence and when you have more autonomy, and especially when you don't have a manager looking over your shoulder and you're working with another developer on a big feature, it takes like, several weeks or several months. I think documenting everything that you do is very important. If you have a blocker because that person didn't do their job, try to ask someone else to unblock you if it's possible. No, this is just bad advice. Like, this needs to be addressed by management. I feel like this author just had a really shitty experience and a manager that just didn't back him up. Or didn't resolve the problem. Or this author was, quite frankly, too much of a coward to address it with this developer. That could be a reality. Like I say, a lot of developers are socially awkward. And I think most people don't want conflict, but most people don't even know how to approach something that's potentially going to start that conflict in a constructive and empathetic way. So, like, it could be where they've tried to talk to their manager at least, or tried to talk to the other person. I get the feeling they didn't even, like, really try with this other person, like, in an empathetic way. I don't know. Because I've worked with other developers where it is a frustrating experience. They're not holding up their end, but I think, like, approaching them and, like, you kind of learn about their blockers and what they're struggling with and their pressures. It's like you'll start to discover different things that you didn't realize and why they did things a certain way. And I think it just, like, open communication, empathetic communication is going to open that dialogue enough to, like, have you both on the same page, syncing together. And that's how you work with synergy with other people on the team, especially when you're working directly with them. Talk directly to them. Be professional but not mean, and tell them what and how they can improve. I just feel like you really didn't do this much if this is the advice that you're giving, or you just had bad leadership. I don't know. I would have to dig into this situation more. Remember, there is no need to be a jerk to them. I agree with that. And sometimes people won't even bring it up because they feel like they're just afraid of how they're going to take it. Sometimes you don't know the whole story. I've seen some cases where a person just can't do their job properly. They are burdened with tons of tasks, doing work for 2 people. That is a reality. But see, now like it seems like you're having a little bit of empathy. I just like the previous advice that you gave isn't great, which makes me think you didn't do this enough. Or you didn't do this enough. Okay. Cool. All right, 1 second. Let me check some. These are pretty good articles so far. I like it. Because we get to talk about this. This is like... I like talking about this. There are just like dynamics in the workplace that they're very frustrating when you first deal with them. And I feel like I've dealt with them poorly sometimes, and I've had to just kind of learn how to navigate some of this stuff. I think it's fun. I think it's actually fun navigating through some of this stuff. What's up, Jeremy? This is probably a good article for you. I got a minute before the company meeting. Hey, everyone. All right, Zinka, what's up? Hope your meeting goes well. We are going to be talking about meetings, I think, in this article. Oh, literally didn't read the title. Get used to being in meetings for hours. Meetings are an important part of the software development job. Some of them are good, but some of them are just time wasters. That is true. There are reoccurring meetings scheduled on a daily or weekly basis. Most of these are not productive. The majority of them are forced by a person who is organizing them because that's the only work that that person is doing. I think software engineers get too pessimistic about meetings sometimes. I think you can have effective meetings, and generally, the longer the meeting, the less effective it's probably going to be. I think that's a very vague and general rule. That's not always true, but I found that to be, on average, true. I just, like, the more this author talks, though, I feel like this author's just in an environment that they hated. I disagree with that paragraph. I do too, and I like there's extra context, even just like how to essentially how to like even the title of this, how to work with incompetent people. I get this feeling that this I don't know, this author's a bit adversarial. Is that the word I want to use? Or just a bit like socially awkward on how to navigate those situations. But it just I feel like this author kind of just wants to sit in their own little cubicle and just code and code and code and code and code, and just be left alone. That's what I feel like. That's the feeling I get from this. I find that I've had there really hasn't been a meeting that's been not worth it, but you can always be critical about how long the meeting is. There's an interesting just like a silly little strategy of just like, okay, you know what? And we did this in our stand-ups because our stand-ups would go a little bit too long, where like the two people that just had to talk it out, they could have just talked it out on their own. That rest of the people didn't need to stay there, but they were like number 2 and 3 in the lineup, and we'd go around in a circle, right? Like you can move conversations to their own separate things. Like I get that, but basically what our CTO implemented was like no sitting, like literally took the chairs out of the office, and we're basically like, okay, we're just standing. There's no reason for these stand-ups to be going like 45 minutes long. This is ridiculous for the morning. So, and he would be standing too, right? But like we would just talk things out. If we needed to actually meet outside of that, we would like those two people would schedule outside of that. I feel like there are sometimes people get stuck in meetings where the entire meeting isn't that relevant. And I think you can work a system out in which you cover the most relevant and common parts to most of the people in that meeting and allow people to dip as necessary. I think you can shorten meetings. And I think a really good strategy is to like really go over, like submit what you want to go over before the meeting starts. And this is what we're going over, right? We're not expanding this meeting. This is what we're going over. There are strategies for this. But I have a feeling this company, this author just had like shitty experiences as a dev where like his team didn't really implement some of this stuff. That's what I'm feeling. This feels like this author had a shitty experience as a developer. It's just an empty protocol to prove their purpose of existence in the company. Like, this is just toxic. Honestly, like, this person now is just coming off as toxic. This is a developer that would never be hired at any of the companies that I worked with, or wouldn't last very long. This developer just seems kind of toxic and pessimistic. Maybe they had a really bad experience as a professional developer. I don't know. But yeah, get used to being in meetings for hours. This is very rare for a junior developer as well, right? As you gain a little bit of experience, you're going to be in more and more meetings. But as a junior developer, like, you're setting the expectation as a professional developer, like people just coming into the industry, and you're saying they're going to be in meetings for hours. I think that's bullshit. I don't agree with that at all. It's going to be at a sushi restaurant, so it'll be productive. Nice, Zinka. I like it. Most developers with that opinion don't actually know what those meetings are for, therefore they think they are not useful. I think that's fair. Software development is a team sport. So do you think... So, you know, this author is not the only person who feels this way. Do you think there's a way to, like, educate the developers on the team to, like, the purpose? Because I feel like there have been meetings where I'm like, what is the purpose of this meeting? I mean, well, most of the time I had a good experience, and we would... Like, there were specific objectives laid out. But do you feel like in other teams that could be a common problem where they're just having meetings and the developers are just participating and they're just there, but they don't really know the purpose? They just feel like management is just doing a bunch of meetings to... Like, do you feel like that's a common perception that could be solved through education? Badly run meetings are a total thing, but that doesn't mean the meeting didn't have a valid purpose. I agree with that, yeah. So to be fair, this author did say... this author did say... Where was it? Most of these are not productive, so I'd be curious about what the definition is of productive. Like, what is the line of the sand where that meeting turns to productive? But this just makes me feel like this developer kind of just wants to be in their own cubicle and just code and be a code monkey and just leave me alone. This feels very antisocial and toxic. Like, not even trying to understand. Like, not even talking about what meetings are productive or anything like that. Maybe we'll keep reading. On the other hand, there are productive meetings. Those meetings ensure information exchange between team members of different teams. But that's essentially every meeting, right? That's not just some meetings. The majority of software engineers hate meetings, but remember that your job is also to communicate about things openly and proactively. Like, when I hear statements like it's just an empty protocol to prove their purpose of existence in the company, I don't think you're communicating about things openly and proactively. I think you're letting things go, or you're not trying to understand. Like, you kind of come off a bit... I've already described how you come off here, and I think you're kind of just trying to cushion it with these sentences. The fact that you're even making these statements makes me feel like you're not doing this enough. What's up, NatSec? How you doing? I think there is, yes, the real problem is badly run meetings. That's probably pretty common. A well-run meeting needs pre-reading materials, starts with the objective in the beginning, organizes breakout sessions for stuff that isn't directly on topic. I like it. And yes, if you do like this live stream, if you're watching even after the live stream, please do like the video. Feel free to follow me on Twitch, whatever. But it does help boost it in the algorithm. I do appreciate that. Sharing information is crucial for projects to move forward. When you share information, it can help other teams to better understand what you're doing in the opposite. I feel like you're just saying fluff here to, like, cushion what you really feel like here. Especially with you starting off with this. I just get a feeling you hate meetings. I get a feeling that you hate interacting with other people. And maybe that's an extreme thing to say, but I think to some extent you do. Based on your bad experiences. All right. They will ask you for estimates a lot of the times. That is true. Business revolves around numbers. Every project has its cost. And to calculate the cost, management needs to estimate how long it will take to build a certain feature. Then it goes down to software engineers to estimate their work. Usually estimates are time-based, but sometimes they also ask for complexity estimates. In a lot of situations, you have no clue how long it will take to build something. You read requirements, do some research, and you give a number. It's a very tricky thing to do this. My advice is generally overestimate or underestimate, over deliver. I think that's really good advice. Maybe managers don't like that, but I've literally had managers tell me to do that. But like they kind of understood my work ethic too. Like I think a lot of people will fall short to what they set for their goals, and I think that actually is a problem. So I would argue it's probably not good advice for managers to tell everyone to underestimate and over deliver. And I think you have to know that individual specifically. But yeah, a lot of people, it is hard to estimate. I think you're going to have situations in which you have spikes in which you really have trouble estimating how long it's going to take. And usually that spike is you diving into the most complicated portion of what you're trying to build and see if you could actually solve it in the way that your team kind of wants it solved. It's explorative. But I think you get better over time with this. The more problems you solve, especially within that team, the better you get with this. So, with this, you will have no clue how long. I think, like, as a good developer, you're just going to get better with this over time. Hey, what's up, Spark? Good estimate gives upper and lower bounds. If the company doesn't like error bars, then that is a real danger sign. I've never had upper and lower, Jeremy. It's been said, right? But I guess if they're not expecting a range or kind of like I guess it doesn't need to be explicitly written anywhere or said. But I think project managers and leads and stuff like that, understanding that it can go a little bit less and over, I think that is an expectation to have for those managers. But yeah, if you are forced to work over the weekend because it went over a little bit, right? And everyone else kind of gets off on Friday, and you, like, just because you're not able to estimate accurately, like, you should have people helping you out with that. Like, your manager should have a good idea of how long something's going to take, right? Like, there hasn't been a time where my manager or senior developer didn't know how long it was going to take for me specifically. They're really good at estimating that. That's why I say good developers they get their estimates a little bit better. It's not going to be perfect, but over time you get better with it. But if you have someone that forces you to work weekends and several nights because I don't know, like, it took longer than you expected, I do feel like that is just a recipe for burnout. I think you're eventually going to find another company to work for. I'm just trying to think through kind of like how my project managers have dealt with it and stuff like that. And I've had, when I dove into WordPress and I kind of managed the whole application back end and front end, it took a lot longer for me to, this is like my last 2 weeks at the company. I put in my 2 weeks, and I remember getting I saw a very toxic message from the product manager, like, how the fuck does it take this long to build this into like our sign up pipeline, or it was like our product, our pricing thing, our cart, whatever it was. And I remember I went over a tiny bit, right? There are product managers that are really toxic, and I think a lot of them also have a lot of pressure from higher ups as well. I think that can be very much a red flag. And I remember talking to my CTO about it. He's like, yeah, just ignore him. Like, you're fine. Like, this is kind of how long I expected it to take. I think he just wanted it done sooner. He's getting pressure. It's like, so you're going to have different people within the company that kind of just have their own pressure going on, which is kind of frustrating. Like, this is one of the most frustrating parts about being a software engineer. It's like everyone has different deadlines, everyone has different pressure, and you're usually not aware of the shit that other departments deal with. But man, in the tech world, the pressure's just high. Like, it's actually kind of common for people to take their pressure out on other people. Even at good companies, good culture, with good culture. This is one of the most frustrating parts, in my opinion, about being a software engineer. And so I guess what I'm considering is I like this idea that I think it's safe for a while to assume that it's going to take you a little bit to really figure this out. And when you, even if you're a developer with like 5-10 years of experience, if you are tackling something new, you're probably going to get the estimate wrong. Probably going to be more accurate than someone who just got into the industry, but still, like, it's not going to be perfect. But yeah, this is, honestly, I think this leads to a lot of burnout for software engineers. Like, this is the major thing for burnout for most software engineers, in my opinion. Yeah, if a company doesn't understand the realities of estimates and insists on a hard number, then that's a bad place to be. The kind of culture flows from the top in a lot of cases. If it's common to the company, then it's a cultural problem. If it's only a single person or a few, then you might be okay anyway. And it's hard to figure that out when you're just applying for a company too. How do you actually, I would love to hear your opinion, Jeremy. How do you figure that out? You're a developer going into a new company, you're interviewing. How do you figure out if there is like, it's a high pressure situation coming from the top going down to the bottom versus you just talking to the product manager, like, and figuring out, okay, this product manager is just like a bit high strung. It's just this product manager. They actually don't have a lot of pressure. It's just the way they do things. But, you know, the CTO is like, what question? Is there like a single question or something you would ask to figure out, is this a big cultural thing? Or is this kind of just like this person thing? Communicating the potential to miss a deadline early can help take the pressure off. That's actually really good feedback. Thanks, Small. I agree with that. That is very good feedback. And I think being open, yeah, saying it at the last minute that you're like 60% done with a feature that's supposed to be done by the end of that day can be a little, it can be taken the wrong way versus you saying early on, wow, okay, I'm really getting stuck at this area. It might take a little bit longer. Like you saying it on Tuesday versus you saying it on Friday. That's a huge difference. It's going to sound like I'm just being funny, but going to those meetings the article was complaining about will give you visibility into that. Yeah, but how do you figure that out before you join the company? So what I'm saying is, like, as a developer that doesn't really have a big window into the company and the culture, how do you figure that out during the interview process, not once you get hired and then you have to attend those meetings? Because you're right, that will come out in the meetings for sure, but how do you figure that out early? Would you rather, for better estimates, we switch measuring story points to how many duck-sized horses you're willing to fight rather than implementing the task? Damn, okay. I don't think you can figure that out beforehand. There has to be a way. Maybe, I think it's talking to different departments and asking, what are you asking? Expectations of the department from the developers, right? Tell me kind of like a question I think I like asking from different departments is like, kind of what's a bad experience with a developer? Describe that to me. And like, what's a good experience, right? It tells me their expectations of developers. And sometimes it's just speed, getting features out. It's communicating early, right? I think sometimes some of that can come out if you just ask for a question that goes over expectations within different departments, but you're not necessarily interviewing any executives high up. So it's very hard to figure out if it's coming from high up, unless you look at reviews on a site like Glassdoor or something like that. You can just ask in the interviews how they handle estimates, but they may not be honest. That is true. Yeah, maybe it is a really hard thing to figure out. I want to continue thinking about that because I think that's this is, again, one of the most common things that I think burns developers out over time. Maybe I'm wrong about that. And yeah, if you're watching this afterwards, feel free to disagree in the comments and let me know. But I'm very curious about this because this is important for people to figure out. You probably have a lot of reading between the lines. I can expect that. All right, later when you start to work on that feature, you encounter many problems that you weren't aware of when you gave time estimates. Then you need to compensate for the wasted and hope not to break the deadline. That's why it's always good to under-promise but over-deliver. I agree with that. For example, when your project manager asks you to implement feature X by Friday, you won't say, oh, I can finish it by Tuesday. Instead, you will say, oh, sure, no problem. Why? Because of the promise to deliver it by Tuesday and you run into some problems, you won't be able to fulfill that promise. Instead, if you accept Friday as a deadline and you finish it by Wednesday, excuse me, you can deliver it 2 days earlier. This is a very, I think generally this is a really good rule. I agree with this. I don't think it's dishonest. I think it's accounting for stuff that can come up. And you got to keep in mind, like, you have other people who don't give a fuck about your code quality. You have other people that don't really care about scalability in the long term. They don't care about readability and maintainability of the code, right? You don't have people who give a shit about you writing tests. There are responsibilities as a developer that you have to guard, you have to own, because there are other people that you will talk with that want this feature out that don't give a fuck about that. And I think that's like a really important thing to understand as a developer. So I think it's actually very honest to overestimate, or underestimate and overdeliver. I think that's a really good mindset to have as a developer. There are a lot of formulas on how to do estimates, and everyone has their own rules. I also have my own rules if I need to deliver some feature, and I think it will take 2 days. I add roughly 40% more time to it just to be safe. So in this case, the estimate will be 3 days. Later, if I am done in 2 days, I can just deliver it earlier. Okay. I don't really disagree with the end of this. Bugs will be your arch enemy for life. One of my signals is whether they allow upper and lower bounds in the estimates. Okay. I've worked at good companies that didn't, though. So that's why I'm hesitant on adopting that. But I think what you're saying is if I do ask that question, that is a good signal. But I don't think it's necessarily a bad signal if they don't. I'd be curious about I think it would depend on what they said. It's actually rare. Okay. Okay, yeah, maybe I'm thinking like that's a little bit idealistic, but it could be a very good signal. Yeah. Okay, bugs will be your arch enemy for life. The more you code, the more you are aware that bugs in your code are everywhere. When you are just starting with programming, you think you will code something, it will work fine, and it's the end of the story. But in reality, it's a different story. There are countless things that can produce bugs. Your own code, humans make mistakes, and you should not trust that code is working perfectly. You can write tests, but bugs can occur after that due to various reasons that you aren't even aware of. Third-party libraries, those libraries are also written by software engineers like you and me. Always watch for activity and how frequently those libraries are updated. Hardware failure. Software relies on hardware. Mark Hanna explained that, or what your software is without hardware in his quote. It's Fugazi? It's a Wazzy. What the fuck did I just read? It's a Woozy. Okay, cool. We're skipping. Electricity. Yep, hardware needs power to run. Without it, it's useless. I worked on one project with Raspberry Pi. The client had constant problems with the device turning off at random times. After days of investigation, we finally found out the issue. He used a different power supply than the original one provided because that device was turning off at random times. So the truth is, you should assume that everyone has bugs. That's why experienced devs never trust their code if it runs successfully in the first place. That is a thing. It's just like, why is this working? Come on. What, like, this is actually more annoying that this works on the first try. Like, maybe this is just my belief. I'm kind of curious if anyone else thinks this, but if I've written code longer than I usually would before testing it, and it just works, immediately I'm more annoyed because I'm like, okay, there's actually a bug that I'm not noticing that I'm going to have to deal with later. It's easier to see the bug in front of you happen, but not like automatically I'm like, okay, crap, there's a harder bug to detect what is wrong. I don't know if that's just me. It's very much a thing because now you're wondering where the inevitable bug is. Exactly. Oh, that was a quote from Wolf of Wall Street. Oh, actually, I'm going to try to read this quote. Hold on. I'm going to butcher it because I did like that movie, but I watched it so long ago. Okay, it's Fugazi. It's a Wazzy. It's a Woozy. It's a fairy dust. It doesn't exist. It's never landed. There's no more. It's not on the element chart. It's not fucking real. That is a sentence. What? Okay. Yeah, I don't know. Yep. I was thinking about watching that video once more. I think it was a really good video. I want to go back and watch some old videos that I saw many, many years ago. I just don't want to pay for them. I'm not saying like I'm actually someone that will pay for movies. I just don't want to, so I don't watch them. So I like the message of this section, and I think a lot of developers, especially that are newer, are very scared of this happening, especially introducing any bugs in production. And I think way too many new developers, including me, that like when I was starting out, I really built up a lot of anxiety around this. Cue my rant on how mocking is bad. It's my hot take on testing. I've gotten so much faster debugging and hitting deadlines by having ChatGPT read my errors and suggesting fixes. It's been a huge relief. That is a thing. Be careful about creating that dependency, Zinka. You're very early on in your career. Be very careful about that. I see developers that are getting into the industry, and if you have to use ChatGPT to be able to spot that stuff and hit your deadlines, that almost feels like that has me concerned about your job. Be very careful about that. Be very careful. Especially about the dependency you're building with that. Let's see. So the truth is, you should assume that everything has bugs. So experienced devs never trust their code if it runs successfully in the first try. Even if the QA engineer reports bug, assume that the bug ticket is a bug and check for everything. Okay. Yeah, I think one thing that I learned for myself was I needed to spend more time testing my own features and testing these oddball scenarios and trying to understand what could happen. I didn't do that enough in the beginning, and QA is really going to appreciate you testing your own code. Because I've talked to QA, and like you could build a really good relationship with QA with like just not introducing like really like I guess I've just heard stories of QA saying like the feature doesn't even work. Like I was literally handed a feature that literally does not even work and does what, you know, is in the requirements of the ticket. I'm like, that's weird. Why would developers do that, right? And I've literally gotten that feedback based on like a browser incompatibility. But I think like testing of your own code is actually, obviously it's important, but I think not enough developers do it as extensively as they should. LOL, I know. I need to break the habit. You do have a point. Because what you're also doing is you're creating an unrealistic expectation of your, I'm lacking the word. It's at the tip of my tongue. Of your productivity, for lack of better words. You are basically delivering something in a certain time, creating an expectation from your manager and other people on the team that you can do it this fast. And then it's just like, then you lean on that dependency hard to be able to maintain what is expected of you. And so you just don't want to put yourself in that situation too. All right, so uncertainty will be your toxic friend. In this job, you will feel uncertainty almost all the time. I already explained the estimates example above. That's just one example where you feel uncertainty. You give your best shot, but you are not 100% sure you can finish the work in that estimate. Besides that, there are countless other things that are uncertain. Here are some examples. Implementing something in your project you never worked with. Third-party API. Are you going to implement something you aren't familiar with? Transfer to a new project. With new technologies, you will think about how you are going to be efficient and productive with something you need to learn. This is less... I guess it's... I feel like I don't feel uncertain about this. Maybe it's overconfidence on my end. But I feel like when you just adapt enough technology, when you just pull in enough libraries, when you just you just get used to it, and you just are able to read that documentation pretty thoroughly. But what could be uncertain is like badly written documentation. So I guess there are things within that that could be uncertain. Move to a new company. You're unsure how you're going to settle in and vibe with new people. Sure, bug report on the day you need to finish the work. You fear that you are going to break the deadline. Bug report? No. Fuck this. This is a pushback. If I have to stop what I am doing to fix a major bug that needs to be fixed now, that company better not pressure me to work over the weekend or anything like that if the pressure is high enough where I need to fix this bug now, especially if it's not something that I've very carelessly introduced into production. But companies should understand this. When you have to shift your priorities, you only have a certain amount of time during the day. And this is where, like, I have a hair. I swear I cannot get it. It's just floating in the front of my left eye. But, like, this is where you get toxic companies that have unrealistic expectations, that burn their devs out and just keep recruiting more and paying way more to be able to do that. But you get these companies that do this. But this is a big thing I push back on. It's like, I don't care that you wanted this feature done today. Like, if I had to reprioritize to fix this major bug and I'm not able to get this feature done because of it, I'll see you next week. Like, maybe not, obviously not all managers are going to like that, but I don't think I've had a manager that really, like, if I was firm about it, really had an issue or they, like, got petty about it or anything like that. They might not have liked to hear that, but I feel like there are just some times where you have to fight for yourself and fight for your work-life balance. And if that's like you're called into the office and you're getting written up over something like that, that is a very toxic culture. It's time to move on. Keep your job in the meantime. Just apply, interview. Like, if you have a serious conversation with your manager and this becomes a problem where when you fight for your work-life balance and you get major pushback, it's like, no, you need to get both done. Like, that's bullshit. That is not an environment that's going to be a long-term solution for you. That's when you start looking for work on the side. Not on the side. You start interviewing on the side to replace that job. Thankfully, my boss is very understanding and patient, but yes, I could see it backfire. I do have research to fix this every time, though, so I don't just copy and paste and go. Okay. That's something. Just be careful. But yeah, it sounds like you kind of understand. Good shops will have a rotation for the people who are working on bugs. That is true. Yeah, I've had that. That is very convenient. Shifting and yeah, even shifting focus is a killer. I agree with that. Man, context shifting is also... I wonder if this person mentions context shifting. Hold on. Context... Nope. That's another thing where you constantly are pulled in... This can happen in different meetings as well. This is a really long and thorough article. I like it. But this can happen when you're just pulled into different meetings and you just have to shift your brain constantly, or you like have 30 minutes to work and then you're in a meeting, then you only have like 45 minutes to work, you're in another meeting. That could be really frustrating. So I like companies that'll kind of like group meetings together. But context shifting is really rough. It takes a while to focus on the problem that you're trying to fix. I'm going to be honest, we're not going to make it to this article. This is a pretty long and thorough article, so we're going to end with this. It's a good article, though. Okay. Job security, economic situations, pandemics, wars, and other factors heavily affect this industry, which results in layoffs. Job security is an illusion. This is important to call out, and I appreciate this. Job security is 100% an illusion in the tech industry. Don't do it. Career security is what you want to aim for. And that means keeping your knowledge up to date. That means you can kind of get siloed into working with a stack. And this happens a lot at banks as developers, where you're working with proprietary software, just like non-marketable software outside of the financial industry. It's like, you need to be careful that you need to make sure that you keep your skills fresh. And sometimes that means working on a side project if you're stuck working with proprietary software. And like, that's what it means. Focus on career security, not job security. The evolution of technology. You were never sure if tomorrow you were going to be replaced by some new technologies like AI. That's complete bullshit. That's just fear mongering for AI. Like, this idea that you're even introducing that you're going to be replaced by AI anytime soon. Like, you should be very specific when you think developers are going to get replaced. Like, you're literally just putting a fear. You're giving people a fear, and you're not providing any sort of detail. That's actually like a really toxic move. That's shitty of you, whoever the author is. The good thing about uncertainty is that drives you to be a better software engineer. It demands improvements and learning if you want to stay in the game. It will be almost impossible to disconnect from your job. This is also a struggle. It's even more dangerous for a junior dev. You are working even harder to build up state in your head while you work. Yep. Career securities, keep up on tech, build your personal network, be a nice guy. Yeah. Be kind. Be kind. Yeah, focus on career security. I like if the last few years haven't woken you up on this in tech, like, I don't know what will. I honestly do not know what will. Focus on career security, not job security. All right, so it will be almost impossible to disconnect from your job. From time to time, I catch myself thinking about my job, problems, and bugs, or things I have to do tomorrow when I should relax and chill. Sometimes cold water in the shower wakes me up from my thinking about how I am going to fix a nasty bug I worked on. Yesterday, I had countless squabbles with my girlfriend about why I'm on Slack when we are on the beach. So I publicly admit that I have a hard time disconnecting from work. I think this is pretty common. I have this issue as well. This could easily lead to burnout, and a lot of developers have this issue. Yeah. It's especially hard to disconnect when you are working from home. If your laptop is on, you can always check emails or Slack messages. So to avoid all this, I turn off my laptop after I'm done with the work. I put quiet hours on my mobile phone for my business emails. I pause Slack notifications after working hours. I disable them on the weekends. When my mind gets into this think about work loop, I try to immediately cut it out. I remind myself that rest and relaxation are important to be productive. I take long walks after work. On some days, I do sports like paddle and football. I try to engage socially as much as I can, avoiding screen time after. This is all really good advice. I can tell this person has struggled with this. This is all really good advice. Still, with all these steps I do every day, I fail a lot of the times. Yeah. I think this is common. And this is a skill you need to be able to build up. And a lot of people let their thoughts control them. They let their thoughts control their emotions. They let their inner dialogue take over. And there are plenty of strategies to overcome that. And it can take time, patience, in building habits. And it's something I still continue to work on and I still struggle with. But I can tell, like, very much so that this person has experienced this pretty extensively. And it can also just make your perception a little bit warped on, like, what's happening with your team and getting frustrated. And, like, so I can understand if this person is letting this run amok in their mind, why they came off as fairly pessimistic in the beginning. So I can empathize with that a little bit more. AI is a tool, not a threat, in my opinion. Now, I want to be very clear. So with AI, I don't think any software engineer can promise that, like, the software engineering industry won't, like, with traditional coding as it is, won't take over jobs eventually. I think most people understand that AI will only progress. I don't think it's fair to say AI isn't a threat in the future. But what I'm more cautious of is instilling in so many new developers who are completely fearful. They're not taking the right action to grow as a developer because they think AI is going to replace their job within a few years, right? And all of these software engineer jobs are just going to disappear, right? So that's why I said I think I said something like that's a very toxic thing to say, or something to that effect, right? When you give this generic statement that there could be a fear, it's an uncertainty that, like, AI is going to take over the job, like, you are introducing an unnecessary anxiety, which no data is supporting right now. No data whatsoever that I've seen for software engineering is supporting that anytime soon AI is just going to take over your software engineering job. It's an extremely rare circumstance. And it's just unnecessary fear mongering. And I'm tired of so many people having this fear because everyone just keeps pushing it and pushing this narrative. It's just fucking over new developers. That's why I go so hard on that topic. Link to article. I'll link to the article in the description when the stream's over. I'll credit the author. Overall, like, yo, this is just my review. I'm very critical of stuff like this, and I usually more critical when I think it's going to have more of a negative impact on new software engineers, but overall it's a very thorough and well-written article. I like it so far. I don't agree with everything, obviously, but I like it. Make sure you respect the pinned comment, Samsel. Having a good team culture helps with this. My first team actively encourage each other to disconnect and not work like crazy. Yeah, that, like, trying to find that in a culture is important. I like that. But yeah, like, I've had my team encourage that as well. I've had managers encourage that as well, because I've always had a problem of overworking, overthinking, and I've just had good cultures that have combated that. At least my first two companies. Third one was third deposition was interesting. All right. You will profit more from good soft skills than from good technical skills. Technical skills are the ones you can learn easily. With different projects, you can understand a particular programming language. You can learn its syntax. Pros and cons is just a matter of practice. On the other hand, soft skills are much harder to improve. Improvement takes a lot of mental strength. You must do things you are not comfortable with. You have to put yourself in situations where you can improve or practice particular soft skills. For example, communication is one soft skill that people always talk about. Let's say you suck at public speaking. You have to force yourself into situations where you can practice some public speaking. True. It's very hard to intentionally put yourself into situations where you know you will suck at. True. Your mind will do everything to avoid those situations. It will bring hundreds of excuses, and it's easy to give up. It's very easy. Very easy. Yo, Jim, what's up? Streaming to the Roku TV. All right. Besides communication, there are other soft skills: teamwork, learning mindset, organization, time management, emotional intelligence, empathy, approachability, persistence, patience, confidence. I've met a lot of folks who are good with technical skills but awful to work with. For example, one colleague would ask me for help. A lot of times I helped him a couple times. Then I noticed after we fixed his problems, he'd come back to me and blame me for messing up other things on the project. That's why you don't... Let me finish reading. Then I had to spend more time with him fixing stuff I wasn't even aware of. And because he was blaming me with such a bad tone, I stopped helping him. I would say that I have a lot on my plate to do, so I can help him tomorrow. Like that, it just needs to be addressed. Like, if that's your concern, you just keep avoiding shit. Like, okay, this is really starting to reinforce what I said earlier. Like, I think this author avoids too much. I think the author should have been a little bit more candid in a lot of their approaches in their different social interactions within the team. And I think this is where candid feedback happens. And, like, you should do it kindly as much as you can. But there are a lot of software engineers that are too afraid of providing candid feedback. And yeah, and even documentation. Tell your boss when that happens. He needs to know. If it's going to reflect poorly on you, I agree, but I think you should not jump to that. You might want to know, but that can really strain your relationship when you go to the boss and you don't at least be candid with that. Okay, yeah, talk to the dev first. I agree with that then. Because sometimes people would jump to their manager too soon. And if I have someone, like, instead of just approaching me, because I had one issue in my coding bootcamp, actually, a long time ago, where she essentially, like, she was focused on things that weren't really getting things done. And I kind of found out reasons why, and it was a bit of a confidence issue. And I could have really empathized with that. But I would say, like, she would say, I got this done. I'm like, we're not doing that feature. We got to get this done. This is your portion, right? I said it in a little bit of a kinder way, but I was kind of like being a bit of a project manager in that sense, because we weren't going to get the problem done. And so instead of, like, directly approaching me, she went to the head instructor and talked to him. And then he basically ended up just being a project manager. It's like, that's kind of just like a snake thing to do, right? And I think people need to, quite frankly, stop being cowards and just be able to confront the problem. You're not going to confront it perfectly every time, but I think a lot of people are going to respect you for at least trying to bring it up, because most people won't. They just avoid conflict. And you're only going to get better at dealing with conflict when you just deal with it. But also, a lot of people avoid conflict so much where, like, when you bring that issue up, I find even if it's not short term, even if they get defensive initially, long term, I gain much more respect from that fellow dev. That is what I have found to be true, and I think that's pretty true for most things in life. Even just when you're working with different teammates in a different industry entirely. I think trying to approach it yourself, having a conversation, and trying to understand like why they did things a certain way or something like that. So that would be my first thing, is try to talk with them more, and I don't think this author did that enough. But also, there's one other thing I want to mention. You need to be careful when you are helping out other developers about fixing their problems. I think mentorship is incredibly important. And I think good mentorship, good coaching, involves getting them to solve their own problem, allowing them to kind of get a tiny bit unstuck so they continue pushing forward and doing a little bit of research. It's about getting them unstuck, figuring out why they're getting stuck, and just kind of nudging them in the right direction. It's not fixing their problems, it's nudging them in the right direction. I find that is really good mentorship. I think some devs, at least in my bootcamp, are too short with people. Don't give the feedback to help people. Devs, at least in my bootcamp, were too short with people. Don't give the feedback to help people. What do you mean? That usually makes a person feels like they're not wanted in the place, and so they give up. What do you mean devs? You talking about the instructors who were devs? You talking about the students? I don't know what you mean by that. All right, so for example, one colleague would ask, okay, read that. Another example, I was the new guy in the project. A colleague, let's call him George, was assigned to help me with anything I needed. I set up the project pretty much by myself, but there was one error I was getting when I tried to run the project. I asked George for help. He spent maybe 2 minutes with me in total to solve a problem and said that he didn't know the solution. I thanked him anyway, tried to solve the error on my own, but finally succeeded with the help of a colleague, Michael. On daily stand-up, George said that he spent his whole day supporting me. I never asked George for help after that. Oh, that's kind of like a dick move. Like, really? You spent his whole day supporting me? I mean, if this is a reality, that's kind of a dick move. Like, don't take credit for shit you didn't do. One more example. There was one colleague who was a main man on the project. Still, the whole team hated him. Other devs, project managers, QA designers, etc. He's a good software engineer, but a real jerk. Extremely rude in communication with everyone. He never wanted to admit he was wrong or accept constructive criticism of his code. Management tolerated him as he was always the loudest one in the room. When he finally resigned, the whole team was celebrating. Yeah, it's rough when you get that one person. With good soft skills, people will like you more and you have a better chance of getting a raise or promotion. If you are technically gifted but hard to work with, your chances are slightly reduced. Also, with good soft skills, people who know you will spread a good word behind your back. They can recommend you for the job without even you knowing it. Yep. I agree with most of this. I like most of what was said in this section. I do agree. I would make the assumption that you spend too much time trying to be that person that doesn't offend anyone. That's kind of like what I'm gauging here, and I think you're creating more problems for yourself than you realize by trying to be too nice, too in your head, not like confronting things when they need to be confronted. I'm being very judgmental, and I'm not doing it to pick on this author, but I'm doing it because I also fell into this trap. I've seen other people fall into this trap, and it's easy to get very stressed out and become pessimistic when you don't deal with certain problems head on. You can do it in a way that works and that you still maintain that relationship. You gain more respect for doing it, but I think it's actually a very common thing for just people in general not to speak up enough. And when you do, it almost feels like you're being too confrontational, or sometimes you're coming off as way too confrontational because you haven't done it enough. When you speak up, when people don't respect your boundaries, when people, like, they're not pulling their weight, stuff like that. When you start speaking up more often, you get more comfortable doing it, and it comes off as more natural. And you'll realize that when you do it more often, it'll come off as less accusatory. It's just more grounded because you don't feel like you don't like let all this stress bottle up and boom, now it comes out. It's like you kind of just do it frequently enough where like you don't bottle it up. And I think that's what it is. It's one, it's practice dealing with conflict. But two, it's like when you deal with conflict when it's needed, and it's probably needed more often in this situation, it just doesn't bottle up. And I would argue I am someone who had a big issue with like letting things bottle up and not speaking up enough. So maybe I'm projecting here. I don't know. But I feel like I can relate to this situation more. But yeah, some of these situations through this article, I'm like, man, I would have spoken up here. I would have said this. But it's easy having this perspective hindsight. You know what I mean? I have to take off early. Have a good rest of your stream. All right, take care, Jessa. I mean, it's not early. We're going late tonight. Thanks for sticking it out. I just ask questions until the light bulb comes on when I'm helping them. I like that. Then they are the ones who figured it out. I just showed them how to do so. That's awesome. They take ownership. It's incredibly important to take ownership. It's one thing I'm very cautious with. Like people get frustrated with me that just come into the live streams. They don't really know me. They just like want me to give them an answer right away. It's like, I don't do that. I want you to take ownership of your journey. I'll try to get you a little bit unstuck, but it's like, what have you done research on, right? A lot of people need to create this mindset shift of taking more ownership over the actions they take and realizing the outcome they're experiencing mostly has to do with them, no one else. So, you know, it's crappy to have to deal with another developer that, you know, puts blame on you or gets frustrated and just because like, oh yeah, this senior developer, like imagine, man, I can't even imagine a senior developer who spent some time helping me and like there's a little bug created. I'm like, yeah, George was helping me. You know, like after George helped me, we pushed a bug into the production database. Yeah, I didn't know what was going on. Like that doesn't sound good. A senior developer comes to help you. Like you might think that you're saving face. You might think that you are trying to not look bad, but you look way worse when someone took the time out of the day to help you and you are throwing them under the bus. That is something you have to be very careful with. I don't think you should take ownership over things that you didn't do, but you don't have to name names right away. You don't have to point the blame. There are ways that you can deal with that situation and you can own what you fucked up, right? So in this situation, it's like, whoever he was helping, it's like they could have just like said that like I really didn't understand the situation, you know, I got some help but I still have a lot to learn and, you know, ended up pushing a bug. Like, yo, as a new developer, you're gonna push some bugs in. That's very understandable, right? And so I think a lot of people need to just change their mindset with that. I don't think you should take ownership of things you didn't fuck up with, but I don't think you should point the blame either right away. Like there are rare moments where that needs to happen, especially when it's repetitive. But man, you're just like immediately tossing out a relationship that could be really good. I think it feels more rewarding when you solve a problem. Oh, let me, devs as in when students would approach other instructors, they didn't have the answer, so the student didn't feel supported. Yeah, I don't know about your specific situation, Jim. Sometimes you get like students who just are too dependent. Sometimes you get students who needed like at least a nudge and they didn't even get a nudge, right? I don't know. We'd have to dig into that situation. I think it feels more rewarding when you solve a problem by yourself than when someone walks you through every step of the problem and writes 50% of the code. I agree with you, 100% agree, which they really shouldn't be driving. Most of the time you should try to let the other developer drive a bit. And write the code and just kind of be there for support. Like, I agree with that. And it does give you confidence as a developer when, you know, you get a little bit of a help, a little bit of mentorship, but you are the one actually writing the code, solving the problem. I'm guessing that's a troll. All right. Let me read that again. Yeah, that's probably a troll. All right, so conclusion. Software development is not a dream job, which is true. Stop thinking it is. But holy shit, software engineering has been put on a pedestal way too much. I guarantee you, even if more people read this article, I think they would just quit learning to code. Because it's like learning to code and becoming a software engineer is not for everyone. The expectations, like there's a huge variety of expectations on what they see as a professional software engineer. It's like where I think they're getting a lot of this from TikTok, honestly, like TikTok and short videos and people trying to get engagement. It's like, it blows my mind how often this kind of realism is labeled as like completely toxic. This is extremely rare. Like I mentioned toxic points within this article and toxic perspectives, but this article is actually really well written. It's pretty extensive. And it's very thorough, and it went over a lot of stuff. I'm like, yes, this is what I've experienced. Like, I might have dealt with things in a different way or had a different perspective, but like this author nailed a lot of things that just caused so many developers to burn out and some to quit the industry and just, give up. So, I think more people, it blows my mind that people, when they read this kind of article, they're just like, this is a completely toxic software engineer. It's like, no, just don't toss these ideas out. Read stuff like this. For some reason, people just have a really warped expectation, put software engineering on a pedestal. Working software engineering often means long working hours. Most of the time, you're glued to a computer screen with a little work-life balance. I think that's false. I think you can get trapped in that. I think that's false. The job demands an online presence, sometimes even after work hours. This often leads to stress and limited personal time. Again, I like this. Sometimes you get stuck not being able to have the experience to be able to be choosy about picking a company with a good work-life balance. But this is, I've not seen this to be like the majority of software engineering positions in the United States. I'd actually be curious about like what country the author is from. Generally, when I hear people give this perspective of software engineering, I find that they don't do a good job negotiating that within the interview. They don't do a good job with like keeping up boundaries and making sure people in the team and their managers respect those boundaries. But often it's just like building trust with your manager, and like a manager wants to keep someone for a long time, right? They're going to listen to you. They're going to be empathetic when you just are open and you communicate what concerns you. And if a bad work-life balance is a concern, then you need to speak up. Like, what I'm saying is so many software engineers with this perspective, just they could be doing so much more to ensure a good work-life balance. Is that because software engineers make six-figure salary? Most jobs without the educational requirements don't make near what a software engineer makes. No, I don't think software engineering is like one of the most lucrative careers for the time investment, or anything like that. And a lot of software engineers don't make six-figure. No, I'm not sure what that was in relation to. I might have lost reference to that. Long hours is not unique to software, and it is also way more under your control than you think it is. I 100% agree with that. Yeah. A lot of people will... I think people that will work... There are a lot of people that'll work long hours that do it in every industry. And I think need to be critical about their own... what they're willing to take on and the boundaries they establish and the relationships that they establish, to just be able to be critical that maybe the reason they have a poor work-life balance is because of them. It's because of you. And I think more people should be critical of that. I agree with that. You have more control than you think. So some people, they aspire of being a software as a dream job. Oh, you think because like they're hearing that software engineering pays a lot, it's a dream? Yeah, I agree. A lot of people get weeded out that just want it for the money. All right, so... but yeah, that's one thing that causes so many people to try to become a software engineer, and they just want to get into tech in general because they see tech as something that's, not going to get replaced. It's unique, right? Like a lot of people falsely fear AI taking over software engineering jobs soon, but in reality, like tech is where you want to be. AI is going to be progressing. Tech is where you want to be, for less of a fear of that. There are some unique blue-collar jobs where that isn't the case, but a lot of office jobs, a lot of jobs in different industries are going to get replaced. Not entirely, but like there's more of a, you should have more of a fear in different industries. But in tech, a lot of people just want to get into tech. And keep in mind, when you get into tech, you don't have to become a software engineer. There are so many different avenues in tech that are easier to get into that bump your salary up. It's crazy. It's just crazy to me that everyone is glued to being a software engineer. Most people won't ever achieve being a software engineer, but they might get into tech. And maybe later down the road, once they have more income, they can take more time out to become a good software engineer and finally land that position. But a lot of people do give up on it. They just go into it for the wrong reasons and they give up. Or with incorrect expectations. All right, let's finish this, though. Additionally, job satisfaction is frequently hindered by tedious tasks. Depending on the situation, you have limited career growth perspectives. There's also potential isolation and remote work. That is true. This is true. And there is also a threat of job insecurity due to rapid evolving technologies. Yes. Again, job security is an illusion as a software engineer. Career security is... So career security is what you should aim for, but limited career growth perspectives, you do sometimes, I would say often, need to guard your personal time and sometimes spend some of it to stay marketable in tech. A good company will give you time to explore that within your week, but, they don't owe you that, right? They're paying you to do a job, so you need to look out for yourself and just make sure you stay marketable, and you'll have to worry about this way less. But there is also positive stuff. Software development nurtures continuous innovation. Software engineers can create attractive applications and solve interesting problems. As a software engineer, you can create fucking almost anything. It's incredible what you're capable of. What you can create. You can change your entire life through coding. It's actually crazy how many people don't challenge that and challenge themselves more to be able to do that. The global demand for software solutions across diverse industries is big. This means there's always a demand for good software engineers. Software development careers provide flexibility with remote work options. True, it's one big blessing to work from any location. Flexibility allows you to sleep in the morning without an alarm. You can work from home in your comfy pajamas. Also, you don't waste your precious time and money on commuting. All true. Provides a little bit more flexibility in that regard. Generally, more so when you have years of experience in the industry, but not necessarily. So, what do you guys think of this article, by the way? This has been going on for what? 5:30? No, I was like 5:45 I started, so... well over an hour. Anyone here that's been here for a majority of the time? I'm kind of curious what you thought of it. Many of your promotions will be going to another job, unfortunately. That is a very broken part of the software engineering industry. Okay. Oh, I'm out of steam. Some things were a bit discouraging, but realistic to set my expectations. What did you find most discouraging, Grace? You drink some water. Should have kept up with water. I disagree with some parts, but overall it was good. I did too. You got to keep in mind, like this, or I have to keep in mind that this author went through their own experiences as a software engineer. It's very easy for me to sit here and judge other software engineers and their perspective and stuff like that. It is. But I think it's important if this is going to be public. I think it's incredibly important for new software engineers. I think the discussion is good. And I think there are things that need to be critical about because, man, it's very easy to become pessimistic in any career. But, like we're going through rough times. Companies are expecting more out of devs. It's not a dev market. It's a job, like it's a company market where they have more control over who they hire and what they can set for their expectations. 2021 was pretty base for software engineers. It's been rough. So I think it's important to be a little bit more critical of some of the pessimistic perspectives, because this is already a pessimistic article, which I love, actually. I love that it was critical of the industry in that respect. I think like the overall message of the article was good. I think it's useful. I think it's impactful in a positive way. From the parts I heard, most of it I think is fairly accurate. Okay. Kind of curious, Grace, what you found really discouraging. You don't have to share it, but I can understand if this does sound discouraging. Lack of job security. That's what you found discouraging? Yeah, you're probably sold, like, being a developer, you have job security, right? Because companies want you. You have high career security in tech as a software engineer. You are diving in deep to become a software engineer. It takes a long time, typically, to become a software engineer. It takes depth of knowledge to become a software engineer. And having proof, social proof, of a company hiring you professionally and making money off of you for your coding skills is huge. It's very respectable. But there are a lot of variables that can affect you keeping your job at that company. And sometimes it's not really much you can do. A lot of the layoffs happen, right? There's not much you can do about that. There might be a reason why you were bucketed into the layoffs, but it doesn't always mean performance. Sometimes you just have too high of a salary. Like, there are a lot of variables that can affect it. Which is why I think there's freedom in not giving a fuck about job security, understanding that you can financially support yourself, your family, the ones you love, in tech as a software engineer for the rest of your life, and you're most likely going to be well off if you actually give a shit about the profession. You actually give a shit about the craft. You should expect a good life as a software engineer if you continue pushing forward with it. When you can trust that, job security doesn't mean much. That's my perspective of it. Author came across as a little bitter, but he made valid points. I think that's my take too. I think that's my take too. I think the pessimism, I'm going to be starting a coding bootcamp soon, so I want to feel more optimistic about my future. I feel I still am, but need to know what challenges to expect. Okay. It's a pessimism. Yeah, I would argue this author did come off as a bit pessimistic, a bit bitter. And I think I made those parts pretty clear. But I'm not even saying that shouldn't have been in the article. I'm glad the author spoke up about this stuff. Because the views that were more pessimistic and what I was critical of are actually very common with a lot of experienced software engineers that I've talked with. And I think there are ways to mentally better manage that and shift the outcome based on you being able to manage that and you being able to take the action, deal with conflict in a certain way, and challenge yourself like, I'm probably not dealing with this conflict in a good enough manner. Some really interesting points. It does sound like they had a bad experience, especially around their team. Okay, so are you guys just picking that up because I was critical of those areas, or did you, it seems like you guys generally picked that up as well? Yeah, I think I answered that question, Jim. Yeah. I think job security is something you shouldn't trust as a developer. My current company is only a few hundred people, but I'm paid well and I work on interesting stuff and I have a good work-life balance. I wouldn't read too much into the big tech layoffs. Yeah, it depends on how you let the big tech layoffs affect you. Like, I think they carried over into many smaller companies. But again, like, I think you just need to force yourself to look away from job security. And when you do that, I think the layoffs shouldn't affect you. Well, they might affect you, but like, they shouldn't affect the actions that you take of pursuing a career in software engineering. But they should affect your financial planning. I think that's what I would say. And you hear about a lot of big tech layoffs, and you got to look at the specific positions. You get a lot of recruiters that were laid off. You get a lot of people in different departments that were laid off. A lot of people see big tech layoffs and automatically associate that to like mostly software engineers. That's not true for a lot of companies. It's easy to see these big headlines and associate them as validating your specific fears of software engineering and your trust and confidence that this is going to be a lucrative and long-term and healthy and positive path for you. I heard a lot of discussion around the big tech layoffs, especially when a lot of fear happened, and a lot of people would comment on that fear, reinforcing that fear. And often they would associate very general statistics with reinforcing their specific fears. I think you have to be careful of that. That's why I think data is huge, and digging into that data is important. And not enough people do that, because a lot of people don't have time to do it, right? You just go on LinkedIn, you go on Twitter, and you just see this shit happening. You're like, fuck, more. And all it does is like, you want to toss it out of your mind, even if you don't engage with it. But it's still in the back of your mind. You're still like, big tech layoffs. And it discourages you from like enjoying coding and diving deeper into it. It's like, am I doing the right thing? Am I investing my time in the right thing? Should I go back to my old industry?
Listen.
Lolly Lou just subscribed on Twitch. Thank you so much for the support. I'm sure I butchered that name. What the hell was that name? Hold on. Where's my recent events? Lolly Lou Low MG. Thank you for your Prime. I appreciate that. You could have given that Prime to anyone. You gave it to me. I do appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. All the $5 stuff, it goes directly towards my bills, so I do appreciate that. But anyways, yeah, I think I'm done. I think I'm just ranting a bit. But overall, good article. Take it with a grain of salt like any other article. That's what I would do. You deserve it. I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah, that's it. That's all I have to say. So anyways, people that are watching the past broadcast, let me know what you thought of it. We'll do more articles like this. I like doing it on Tuesdays, but we will have, if you have any questions for me, any blockers, anything like that, it'll be on Thursday, 5 p.m. Central Time this week. We're going to do a live stream. Feel free to bring your questions then. But yeah, let me know like where your head is at with the software engineering industry. Is this like, has this changed your perspective? Has it scared you away from it? Is it encouraging? I'm actually really curious. Twitch names, you never know what you're going to get. That is true. But yeah, thanks for being here, guys. I appreciate you. I will see you on Thursday. Good luck on all of your projects. Appreciate the discussion, and happy coding, everyone. Take care.